All right, so we're looking at Thailand today. This should be an interesting one.
Yeah, it definitely seems like one of those things where you have to kind of look beneath the surface a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Like at first glance, you see, oh, Thailand industrial boom. You think, oh, hot real estate market.
Right.
But then we dig a little deeper and we find out from our friends over at Ocean Worldwide that it's not quite that simple.
Not quite.
So they're calling it a residential sales plunge. This article we're looking at, it focuses on that Eastern Economic Corridor.
The EEC.
The EEC, exactly. And particularly around those industrial zones like Chonburi and Rayong. And the numbers are...
Well, the numbers are pretty stark, I have to say.
Yeah.
New residential sales in the second quarter of 2024, they're down to just a little over 5,100 units.
Wow.
And that's down from almost 8,000 at the end of 2023.
That's
a big drop.
Yeah, it is. It's like everyone slammed on the brakes all at once. And I'm wondering, like...
What makes you wonder what's going on, right? Because you'd think...
What's the disconnect?
Exactly.
And the article points to factories as like a big piece of this puzzle.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Because if your job at like Amada City Eastern, one of those massive industrial estates,
right?
If suddenly your job is uncertain, that's going to have a ripple effect on your housing decisions.
Yeah, you're not going to be running out to buy a condo if you're worried about your next paycheck, right?
Exactly. And the article specifically calls out Rayong as having this oversupply of low-rise housing because of that, I guess, lack of demand.
They're saying something like 29 months to sell out at this rate.
Oh, wow.
Which is...
That's almost 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's a long time. And it's especially bad in that Nikomamata City Eastern area.
Yeah.
Over 1,400 units just sitting there vacant.
Empty.
And only like a tiny percentage actually selling.
I'm looking at this absorption rate they keep mentioning, which for our listeners who might not be familiar with the term.
Yeah, it's a bit of a...
It's a real estate term.
Yeah.
Basically tells you how quickly homes in an area are being bought up.
Exactly. So a low absorption rate means things are moving very, very slowly.
And they're reporting 2.7%.
Yeah. That's not a seller's market.
Not at all.
No.
But here's the real head-scratching.
Commentary.
Land prices?
Yeah.
They're going up.
Up. But we just talked about how...
That's wild, right?
That doesn't make...
In the first quarter of this year, EEC land value went up 3.3%.
Okay.
Okay.
Respectable.
Yeah, not bad. But in the second quarter, it shot up by 8.3%.
Wow. So someone's seeing something there.
Someone's seeing something. And according to this article, that someone is Chinese investors.
Ah, interesting.
They're pouring money into the EEC.
Really?
Specifically into electric vehicle manufacturing.
So we're talking like those big players like BYD, Chang'an.
The big ones.
Setting up shop?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a bit of a head-scratcher, right?
It really is, because on the one hand, you've got this struggling housing market.
Right.
And on the other hand, you've got this huge influx of investment.
Yeah, it's like a tale of two cities almost.
Exactly.
But within the same region.
Wild. So how do we make sense of this?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It seems like...
So we've got these big companies moving in BYD Chang'an. These are major players in the EV market.
Huge.
But it's not like there's this corresponding boom in housing demand.
Right.
It's not like, oh, they're building a factory so everyone needs a place to live.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be the natural progression.
Right. It's like supply and demand 101.
Exactly.
More jobs, more people needing homes.
Yeah, but this article, it throws a real curveball at us.
Okay.
Because it brings up automation.
Ah, okay.
Like maybe these EV factories, they don't need as many workers.
As the traditional factories.
Yeah, it could be more automated.
So more robots, fewer people on the assembly line?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, so then what happens to these towns that are built around these industrial zones?
Right.
Do they just become ghost towns?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. Bustling factories, but nobody living there.
It's an interesting thought experiment, but I think what we're seeing in Thailand, it's not necessarily about things disappearing.
Okay.
It's more like a transformation.
Transformation. Okay, I like where you're going with this.
Yeah, so imagine this. Instead of these sprawling factory towns, we might see smaller, more concentrated industrial centers.
Okay.
Super high-tech and efficient.
Like little hubs of industry.
Exactly. And then maybe further out from those hubs,
Yeah.
you have these more residential communities.
So not everyone living right outside the factory gates anymore.
Yeah, more like satellite towns. People commute in for work.
But they choose to live somewhere a little more.
A little more livable, maybe a bit slower paced.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, think about it. If your job is already pretty intense, you might not want to go home to that same environment every day.
Exactly. You might want some separation. some peace and quiet.
So this changes everything about how we think about these industrial areas.
Absolutely.
It's not just about, oh, let's build more housing. It's about
the bigger picture.
yeah, how do we design these spaces for the future of work?
And how do we connect them? Transportation infrastructure, all of that comes into play.
Yeah, it's almost like we're seeing this real-time experiment happening in Thailand.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
With these ripple effects that could change how we approach industry and urban planning globally.
It really makes you think about those connections, those often invisible threads.
Right, because what starts as like a local housing slump
Exactly.
could actually be a symptom of something much, much bigger.
A sign of the times, really.
Yeah, and it all comes back to this idea of automation and how it's reshaping.
Everything.
Yeah, how we live, how we work.
And it's not just about Thailand, right?
Exactly. This is something that everyone listening
Everyone
needs to be aware of. Because these global trends...
They have a way of showing up on our doorsteps.
So we're talking about these global trends, but how do we connect the dots from Thailand to like our own towns and cities?
Well, it starts with paying attention to what's happening around us, right?
Okay.
Like, what are the big industries in your region?
Right. Think local.
Exactly. And are those industries seeing more automation creeping in?
Because it's not just manufacturing anymore, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you've got logistics, agriculture, even some white-collar jobs.
Data entry, all that.
Exactly. And as those jobs change, the places people live and work, they change too.
So some areas might see a surge in demand.
Right, like those satellite towns we were talking about.
Yeah.
More people wanting to live there. Maybe they're priced out of the urban centers.
Longer commutes, but
a different pace of life.
more space, maybe.
Exactly, trade-offs.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, those areas that are more closely tied to industries that are rapidly automating.
They might start to see some stagnation.
Or even decline.
It's possible. Yeah, it's all connected.
It is. It's like we need to broaden our perspective when we think about these things.
Absolutely. We can't just focus on what's right in front of us.
Because a housing slump in Thailand, it might seem like a world away.
Right. It seems like someone else's problem.
But it's actually a reminder that these forces, these global economic forces, are always at play.
And they have a way of touching all of our lives in one way or another.
So it sounds like what you're saying is we need to stay informed, stay curious.
Exactly. Don't just read the headlines. Think critically about the information you're consuming.
And connect the dots.
Connect the dots. Yeah, what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in your industry, in your community.
It's all part of the same big picture.
It really is.
Well, this has been fascinating. I always learn so much from these deep dives.
Me too. It's always good to chat.
And I hope our listeners feel the same way if this sparks some curiosity for you.
As always, we encourage you to keep digging.
Do your own research and see what connections you can make to your own life.
Absolutely. There's a whole world of information out there.
And until next time, we'll see you on our next deep dive.